Debuting on Disney's streaming service, Disney+, The Mandalorian made history for being the first live-action Star Wars television series. Taking place exactly 5 years after Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, and 25 years before Episode 7, The Force Awakens, this series chronicles the adventures of Din Djarin, a Mandalorian bounty hunter in the Outer Rim, and how his life was forever changed after accepting a mission from an Imperial remnant. I was so hyped for The Mandalorian when it was originally announced. I think the Mandalorians are the most interesting subculture in the Star Wars galaxy, so the first live-action Star Wars TV series centered around them sounded amazing to me. The fact that it was set during the 30-year time gap between the original and sequel trilogies made me even more excited, as I feel like this point in the Star Wars timeline hasn't been explored enough. I also noticed that promotional material for The Mandalorian emphasized that it was set after the stories of Jango and Boba Fett. This made me wonder if Din Djarin was actually a Mandalorian, or just a bounty hunter wearing Mandalorian armor, like the Fetts before him. I'm personally not a fan of that retcon, but that's another story for another time. Now that The Mandalorian just wrapped up its first season, I can safely say that it was amazing. This show could have easily just been Boba Fett light, but it ended up being a breath of fresh air. It was a great new addition to the galaxy far, far away. Before I go into greater detail, I'd like to emphasize that I'll be discussing spoilers for The Mandalorian Season 1. If you're not completely caught up on this season, and you don't want to be spoiled, stop watching this video and go watch The Mandalorian. First, let's talk about the series' titular Mandalorian, portrayed by Pedro Pascal. Like I mentioned earlier, I did wonder if Din Djarin would just be a carbon copy of Boba Fett, but he ended up being a cool character in his own right. I like how, despite being described as the best bounty hunter in this era, Djarin wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, and he constantly got his butt kicked. I also found his backstory to be very interesting. As a child, Djarin was rescued by a member of Death Watch after his homeworld was attacked by the Separatists during the Clone Wars. This Mandalorian warrior took him in as a foundling, adopting him into the Mandalorian lifestyle. Throughout this season, we see Jaron try to prove himself to be a worthy Mandalorian, which he ultimately succeeds by choosing to save the child from Moff Gideon and his Imperial remnant, and then taking him in as a foundling. Now on to the other characters. I found the majority of them to be very interesting. I think Cara Dune is my personal favorite. Portrayed by Gina Carano, Dune is a mercenary who served as a shock trooper for the Rebel Alliance during the Galactic Civil War. I like how The Mandalorian quickly established that Dune and Djarin are equals. In Chapter 4, they fight each other to a standstill. I also really liked Queal. Portrayed by Misty Rosas and voiced by Nick Nolte, Queal is an Ugnaught moisture farmer who helped Djarin out several times throughout his journey. And of course, I have to talk about the child. I never expected to see another member of Yoda's species after Yoda and Yaddle, respectively. I know there are more in Star Wars Legends, but I'm focusing on canon for this video. This baby Yoda is the most adorable Star Wars character of all time. He stole every scene he was in. The Mandalorian also had really great action scenes. They were entertaining, intense, and sometimes very brutal. My personal favorite fight scenes include the rescue of the child and the subsequent fight between the Bounty Hunters Guild and the Mandalorian's tribe, both from Chapter 3, and the fight against the Klatooinian Raiders from Chapter 4. The action scenes featuring IG-11 were also pretty cool. I liked how he moved around like a wind-up robot. Ludwig Göransson did a great job composing music for The Mandalorian. I like how it was a mix of orchestral and electronic music. Overall, this music feels like Star Wars, but it's not a derivative of John Williams' score from the movies. As a Star Wars lore sponge, I appreciate all the Star Wars Easter eggs in this season. There are nods to the Skywalker saga, the anthology movies, the various animated series, and Legends fiction. None of this felt forced, so you don't feel lost if you've never watched, read, or played whatever Star Wars fiction that was being referenced. I can't really think of anything that I seriously disliked about The Mandalorian Season 1. The only episode that remotely disappointed me was Chapter 5. I appreciate the return to Tatooine, but other than that, it's weak compared to the other 7 episodes. That being said, I am curious about the figure that approached Fennec Shan's corpse. I was so sure that it was Moff Gideon since he was the only major character who had yet to appear in the series at this point, but I don't remember hearing any spurs whenever Gideon walked. So yeah, those are all my thoughts on The Mandalorian Season 1. I can't wait to watch Season 2 later this year. Hello, I see that you have reached the end of this video. If you liked what you just saw, you can give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter at DialogueNerdy. If you really want to, you can also ring the bell to be notified every time I upload a new video.